for each one of you.
The afternoon, a high of minus 10. In Thompson, a chance of light snow, a high around minus 16 degrees. And on the bay in Churchill, sunshine, a high around minus 26. Right now, you're listening to CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM.
Good afternoon, Manitoba. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg, 97.9 FM in Brandon, on the CBC Listen app and on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. Here's what's coming up on the show today. On our call-in segment in the second half of the show, have you watched the debates? 4 candidates squared off in 2 federal Liberal leadership debates this week. Who's your pick for front runner? We're going to take your questions and comments coming up after 12:30. Also, Friday marks the start of the holy month of Ramadan. We're going to head to Brandon to hear how the community there will celebrate the start of the holy month. But first up here, the families of Morgan Harris and Marcedes Myran are responding to the recent discovery of potential human remains at the Prairie Green landfill. As you've been hearing in the news today, the province says possible human remains have been found at the Prairie Green landfill. The RCMP has launched a found human remains investigation at the site, and steps for identification are underway. Teams have been searching the landfill for the remains of Morgan Harris and Marcedes Myran since December. They're 2 of the victims of serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky. Here is Melissa Robinson, cousin of Morgan Harris, speaking to the media in the last hour.
The news yesterday, getting the call and arriving on scene, and us having to now, process everything. As a family, we will for the last couple of years has become a reality. And I think the shock of everything has finally hit me, because I woke up this morning and I just don't feel right. I'm a little shaky. I'm a little uneasy. Usually takes a lot to break me, but I'm pretty emotional today. We're going to continue pushing the search, and we're just going to continue lifting each other up, and being there for each other.
Hi, my name is Jordan Myran. My spirit name is Sweetgrass Woman. As you could imagine, it's been a really, really tough time on me and my family. I want to thank all the supporters that believed in us and helped us fight. Believed that those women were in there and helped us fight get to this point. We couldn't have done it without you, and although it's a good thing that we found the remains, it's also very, very hard. We're going to continue fighting and continue looking for our women, and I just want to thank everyone.
That was Jordan Myran, cousin of Marcedes Myran. We also heard from Melissa Robinson, cousin of Morgan Harris. Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Grand Chief Kyra Wilson also spoke to the media today.
I want to acknowledge the Harris and the Myran family. We see the families here today, not the whole family, but we have some of the family members here, and I acknowledge everyone within the Harris and Myran family. It has been a difficult journey for everybody. There are so many people involved when it comes to these 2 families. So I acknowledge all members of the Harris family and the Myran family, and we're here for you, and we'll continue to be here for you as the Assembly Manitoba Chiefs. It's been a long journey, and I uplift you today on such a heavy day. Your strength and your courage and the love that you have for your family members, your loved ones that you've been searching for in the landfill. That is a true testament to your strength that you all carry. And so when we think about today and what happened yesterday, the discovery of our loved ones, it is a painful time, but also very much a significant moment in this fight for justice. It does definitely bring deep grief, but it also reinforces what we've known, is that our sisters, our stolen sisters, deserve to be found, and they deserve to be honored, and they deserve to be laid to rest with dignity. This search, it's always been about human dignity. We can never, ever leave somebody in a landfill. If we know somebody is there, we can never, ever leave them there. In this case, is 2 First Nations women that were suspected of being in the landfill. And yesterday, we, received the answers that, we never thought would be a reality. It was obviously something that we were hoping for. And I shouldn't say we, I know the families, I'll never speak on families' behalf, but when I think about just this whole journey and, the reality of, finding our stolen sisters in the landfill, it's, you never know what that's going to look like. We must acknowledge, the deeper crisis that we deal with. First Nations women, girls, Two-Spirit people, men and boys, they continue to go missing and are murdered at unacceptable rates. And so this is a major reason why we need to look at systemic change, and it needs to happen immediately. The violence against our First Nations people, it continues, and we can't ignore this crisis anymore. This is a prime example of why we need systemic change, why we need to continue to bring justice for our missing and murdered loved ones. And so if this isn't an obvious reason to change the systems, I don't know what else is. What I will say is that we won't stop until our people are safe, until First Nations people are safe, till our families are safe. This will continue to move on in terms of our fight for our justice. When we talk about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirit, also our men and our boys, we obviously stand here today together in the fight for justice, and we stand for our stolen sisters. So I want to say thank you so much for being here today and listening to the families, Miigwech, and thank you to all of our allies out there. Thank you.
That was AMC Grand Chief Kyra Wilson speaking to the media in the last hour. For the very latest on this story, you can visit our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Whether it's breaking news from around the world, across the country, or in your own hometown, it's all at your fingertips on the CBC News app. Get the top stories from where you live under the local tab, or watch video clips, live events, and the national on your smartphone or tablet. Get all the news you want, when you want it, where you want it, with the CBC News app. Download the app for free today.
12:15 on the dot. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg, on the CBC Listen app and CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. Well, still ahead here, Ramadan starts at dawn tomorrow. We will hear how the growing community in Brandon is marking the start of the holy month. Stay tuned for that. But let's talk about your forecast. Today here in Winnipeg, we're looking at a high of 0. Increasing cloud this afternoon. Tonight, mainly cloudy. Periods of rain or wet flurries overnight. Blowing snow if you're outside of the city. Expect the temperature to drop 3 degrees, dropping to -8 by the morning, and strong wind to northwest, 50 gusting to 80. Tomorrow, mainly cloudy, chance of lingering flurries in the morning, clearing up by the afternoon. We're going to hold steady at that -8. Strong wind once again out of the northwest, at times gusting to 50. Saturday, we're looking at a high of -7. Current conditions around the province at this hour. Brandon, mostly cloudy and -2 for you. Churchill, ice crystals being reported there. -30. Right now in Dauphin, cloudy and -4. Light snow and drifting snow in Flin Flon at -13. Right now in Portage, it is cloudy and -3. Thompson, -20 and mostly cloudy. And in Winnipeg at the Forks, it is mostly cloudy and -4. Friday evening marks the start of the holy month of Ramadan. For the next 30 days, Muslims around the world will fast from dawn till sunrise. In Brandon, an event will take place on Friday night. Organizers of the big gathering there are getting ready to host hundreds of people. The Wheat City's Muslim community is growing. Amir Farouk is president of the Brandon Islamic Center and joins me now. Good afternoon, Amir.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining me. I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So tomorrow is a very big day for the Muslim community. What's being planned in Brandon to mark the start of Ramadan?
Yes, after sunset tomorrow, we are starting our first night prayers. And then from March 1st, the first day of Ramadan will be starting. So most of people comes for the night prayers after the kind of 8 o'clock, 8:30. And then they start their fasting before sunrise. And then they will complete their 30 days. And we are trying our best to give those people, those who are actually new to Brandon this year, to giving them the most of the environment as they feel the home here in our Brandon.
So where do you plan to have the big event tomorrow? Do you have a venue picked out for tomorrow?
No, for these prayers, we actually use our existing facility, and that's enough. We have upstairs and downstairs, so we have enough people. Close to 120, 130 people can come there. So we use our existing facility for our daily prayers and for during Ramadan as well.
And that's the Brandon Islamic Center, right?
Brandon Islamic Center on 10th Street in Brandon. Yes.
Amir, how many people do you expect at the event tomorrow?
Tomorrow event is hopefully it will be more than normal, and I am expecting close to 120, 130 people in the night prayers.
Okay, because last year you also had a lot of people attend the event as well too.
Our most biggest event is the Eid event, after end of Ramadan, that Eid celebrations. So that is kind of a get-together when whole community from all Westman actually comes. So that is close to 600 people I am expecting this year. So, but normally these our night prayers and our Friday prayers, these are the mostly, and Friday during we are actually praying 2 times. Mm-hmm. One is at 1 o'clock and second is 2 o'clock due to our facility restrictions. So for that reason, a lot of people actually come for the Friday prayers.
Now, Amir, the Muslim community keeps growing year after year in Brandon. As you mentioned there are a lot of new folks that you anticipate joining you for the prayers. Why do you think we're seeing such a growth in the community in Brandon? And where are you seeing a lot of these people coming from?
People are coming from all over the place. Actually, we try our best to help the community and fulfill their religious and emotional needs here locally in Brandon and for whole Westman area. So for that reason, we have now full-time imam for Brandon Islamic Center, which can help to the needs of the Muslim kids and also for other services to the community. So for that reason, people are actually coming to Brandon and they are staying. So like last 3 months, we got 3 to 4 new doctors in our community, and they are very happy to see the environment of the community, and also they found the mosque is here and all the services are here. So they feel that like they can actually stay here for longer because they can fulfill all their needs here. So,
Amir, why is it important for the community to come together like this and mark the start of Ramadan?
Ramadan is actually very important in Islamic religion. So this is a month of Quran. Actually, the book, our main book, Quran, it revealed in this month. So for that reason, this month is very much important for the whole community. And also they do fasting for the reason that we can learn to value what we have and be grateful for all the blessings we have been given. And this helps us to feel empathy for the people who have less than us. And we focus on giving back this month through charity in all sorts of ways. So this is very important for that reason. A lot of people actually, they don't usually come in other months of the year, so they start coming and they connect with the mosque more closely in this month.
Amir, I really do appreciate you taking the time to join us today here on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Take care. Amir Farouk is the president of the Brandon Islamic Center. Friday night marks the start of the holy month of Ramadan. It is 12:22 now. Well, when we think of Thompson, we often think of a mining town, but the northern Manitoba community wants to be known for more than just mining. Economic diversification was all the talk at the Northern Linkages Conference this week in Thompson. People who live there believe their community has a lot to offer that other communities can't. CBC's Sanuda Ranawake visited the conference. He first spoke with Thompson Mayor Colleen Smook and began by asking her what the future of Thompson looks like.
Oh, the future in Thompson's very positive. Like, Thompson's been here for 60 years, and when it was actually first built, it was built as a mining town, planned to leave, 6 to 10 years, likely gone. So here we are 60 years later. We've got enough identified ore for a minimum of another 50 years. Plus, there's likely another 200 years of ore in the ground. So Thompson, I think, is just on the cusp of its second beginning, that we are, rejuvenated and going to start fresh and move forward.
When people think about Thompson, they think about mining as the first thing. And you mentioned sort of like a second start for Thompson. What role does mining play in that second start for Thompson?
Well, mining's always very important. Mining built the town in the first place, and critical minerals and mining will help, fund us for the next. But I think more importantly is Thompson as being a hub of the north, because we have 60 to 65,000 people that surround us, use Thompson. So it's definitely going to be important for us to make sure that we're a better service center for all of the north, and rather than just a few. 60 years ago, the communities were 500 to 1,000. Now the communities are anywhere from 5,000 to 8,000 or 9,000. So we definitely owe it to our north to be the hub of the north here.
What kind of industries does that bring with it in being the hub of the north?
Well, we're very diversified. So at one time you didn't think of anything coming north, and then we have the jet engine test facility, which is, multi-million-dollar facility just north of town, or south of town, pardon me. And then we have the cold weather testing. We've diversified over, the thing here. We're a tourism industry. Aboriginal indigenous tourism is very important now to the north, and it will definitely be growing over the next few years. So there's just so many things up here that are lacking in other places that we have here. Even the hunting, the fishing, it's all the experiences are all up here.
Why would all of these industries come to Thompson instead of, like you said, staying in Winnipeg or somewhere down south?
We have all kinds of landmass up here. We have the hydroelectric right up here, so you've got cheap power, you got fresh air, clean air, definitely the ability between the province, the feds, and the municipality all working together, we can make some great things happen up here.
Eric Termundi. I'm a keynote speaker, leadership consultant, helping organizations, communities in the country prepare for the future of work.
Tell me a little bit about the future of that work. You spoke about it quite a bit today. And you mentioned that we don't really know what the future of work is. What does that mean for a community like Thompson?
I think what we're seeing now is that the world around us is changing so fast that the future is becoming increasingly difficult to predict. The trends, the charts, the predictions are generally wrong. They're met with the best intentions, sure, but I found that if the future is impossible to predict, what we really have to do is to build a deep sense of trust with the people around us, leverage our communities and the resources around us, and enable a future that works best for everyone in it. What does that mean? It means really being able to come together, building a deep sense of trust, removing friction when we find it, and exploring new experiments that get us to where we want to go.
Right. Why did you come to northern Manitoba specifically? What about northern Manitoba makes it special?
What I love about northern Manitoba, and it's not just northern Manitoba, I could say northern Canada, is that there's a level of pride in the north that I haven't seen around the world. And I can say that, with complete truth. I spent time in Yellowknife and Norman Wells and Dawson City and Whitehorse and all around Yukon and Northwest Territories. And I see here in Thompson, northern Manitoba, the people that are here love this place. People don't, I just haven't seen this level of passion for where they live. And with this level of passion, with this level of pride for the region that they live, what the message today was is that if we can leverage this pride, leverage this passion, and showcase the people that love it here and live here, the future is not something we have to worry about.
Right. Thompson is known as a mining town. It's one of the biggest industries in the community. What does that look like going into the future with how you mentioned, we don't really know what's going to happen in the future? Is that compatible as staying as a mining town solely going into the future?
Look, the resources in northern Manitoba are incredible, and I guess the analogy that I would compare northern Manitoba to is Calgary and the oil field. There was a time when oil was $35 a barrel, and Calgary was forced to diversify very quickly. Did they leave that industry behind? Absolutely not. But they diversified by leveraging the skills, the people, and the opportunity in a way that got them to where they are today. The same thing happens in the north. The resources, are they going anywhere? No. Should we shy away from them? Not in my opinion, not one bit. And at the same time, should we explore different perspectives, opinions, different understandings of how the world is going to work moving forward? For sure. And that's going to require reconciliation. It's going to require leveraging new Canadians. It's going to require leveraging our younger residents. And I think together, pairing with what's proven and what works, with what's new and what's possible, the future is very bright.
That is Eric Termundi, a leadership consultant for many rural communities in the country. They're speaking with CBC's Sunuta Ranawake. Thompson hosted the Northern Linkages Conference this week.
New on CBC Gem this February. 3 inspiring films that celebrate Black history. Summer of Soul unearths never-before-seen footage of the Harlem Cultural Festival in 1969. Featuring music's greatest artists. Invisible Beauty profiles fashion icon Beth Ann Hardison and her lasting impact. And Queen of Glory takes us on an intimate journey of the Ghanaian immigrant experience. Watch them all for free, starting February 1st on CBC Gem.
Well, still ahead here in the call-in portion of Radio Noon. Who is your top pick for the federal Liberal Party's next leader now that the 4 candidates have squared off in 2 debates? Which way are you leaning? Give us a call. We'll take your questions and comments. Here's the number to call, 204-780-0893. You can, of course, always text us, too, at 204-588-7355. You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg, on the CBC Listen app and CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. Stay with us. The CBC Local News is next.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at -4 with mostly sunny skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. The families of the victims involved in the landfill search are speaking for the first time today about the discovery of possible human remains. Morgan Harris and Marcedes Myran's families had just wrapped up a news conference. Jordan Myran is Marcedes' sister. She says this has been a very difficult day for her family.
I want to thank all the supporters that believed in us and helped us fight. Believed that those women were in there and helped us fight to get to this point. We couldn't have done it without you, and we knew those women were in there. And this is the day that we've been waiting for.
The province said yesterday the RCMP and Chief Medical Examiner are now involved in identifying those remains. The federal government has signed its first pharmacare agreement, and it's with Manitoba. Federal Health Minister Mark Holland says Ottawa will provide $267 million over the next 4 years on 2 bilateral agreements. The first will cover a range of contraceptives, hormone replacement therapy, and diabetes medication. Holland says it makes more sense to cover drugs to keep people healthy.
It also is madness fiscally. And the fact that there is any debate in this country about whether or not somebody gets their diabetes medication is just plain crazy. Because the amount of money it takes to manage somebody who gets sicker is so much more than just making sure they get the medication and make sure that they don't get there.
The second agreement will cover 5 drugs for rare diseases. Federal coverage will begin in June. And Winnipeg's Women's Health Clinic is getting a financial boost after its boiler stopped working and the pipes burst. Last week, the clinic had to close after being flooded from a broken pipe. Today, the federal government announced $10 million to upgrade the 60-year-old building. Executive Director Kemlyn Nemard says she's grateful for that help.
I have to say, when I actually heard the words about the commitment, I almost broke out in tears. For those that, saw the news last week, I'm surprised we look this great right now in this room, because it didn't look like that last week.
The clinic provides health and wellness services for women and girls, Two-Spirit people, racialized, and Indigenous people. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or you can use the CBC News app.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Back soon.
That is Matt Humphrey with your CBC Local News. It is 12:32. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg, on the CBC Listen app, and also on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, still ahead here, have you watched the debates? 4 candidates squared off in 2 federal Liberal leadership debates this week. Who is your pick for front runner? We want to hear from you. Again, give us a call, 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. You can always text us your questions and comments, 204-588-7355, 204-588-7355. Christopher Adams from the University of Manitoba will join us to talk about that just coming up here shortly. But first, we're going to turn our attention now to the forecast. Riley Laychuk joins me now in studio. Riley, that forecast, I noticed that temperature is going to be dropping by the morning.
There is lots happening in the next 24 hours.
And there's also, there was a snowfall warning earlier today in central Manitoba, northern Manitoba, right?
We still have that in place. Snowfall warning stretching from Flin Flon, the Pas, right through Norway House, Grand Rapids, Barons River, Arborg, Riverton, into the eastern side of Lake Winnipeg, down through Kenora, Dryden, Fort Francis. Basically draw a line from northern Manitoba right down to Thunder Bay, and that whole area under a snowfall warning right now. We're looking at up to 20 centimeters of snow by the time we get to this time tomorrow. The beginnings of that have started into northern Manitoba already through the afternoon hours here. This is the latest in a series of low pressure systems that will make its way along the path of the jet stream, which cuts through northern Manitoba right through central Manitoba into northwestern Ontario. So we are expecting, I think we have a better chance with this one of seeing some precipitation here in Winnipeg. Certainly we have clouded over. We did get some brief clearing this morning, so a sunnier start, but we've started to see that cloud filling in once again at -5 in Winnipeg at the moment, Brandon at the moment at -2. As we get into the afternoon hours, we'll start to see that cloud building in a little bit more. I think even by late afternoon, we have a chance we could see a couple of flurries here in the Red River Valley, but I think the best chance for that comes through the later part of the evening. I mean, some of this could end up falling as rain because particularly here in Winnipeg, we're looking at our temperature actually rising overnight to +3 before falling to -8 by tomorrow morning. So a rising temperature, maybe a few showers here in Winnipeg, but certainly areas north, even don't have to go as far as Gimli even to get some of that accumulating snow into the overnight hours. Into the morning, I think still a chance of some scattered flurries. And then a cold front in behind that sweeps through. That will really pick up our winds and drop our temperatures as we get Friday into the day on Saturday. So looking at Gimli, for example, Pinawa, Victoria Beach, maybe only 2 to 3 centimeters, but go a little bit further north, Arborg, Grand Rapids, looking at that 10 to 20 centimeter range as we get into the next couple of days here. The story in Winnipeg, though, by far, I think, will be the winds as we get into Friday morning. So overnight picking up 30 gusting to 60. Could see some gusts overnight in the Red River Valley, even up to 80 kilometers an hour before we start to see those dying off into the morning hours on Friday. So an afternoon temperature today in Winnipeg around 0. Our high temperature around 3 by the time we get to midnight, dropping to -8 by the time we get into the day Friday, -7 for Saturday. Then we're back up above 0 into Sunday, Monday, and into Tuesday of next week again.
All right. Thanks a lot, Riley.
You're welcome.
That is Riley Lachuk with a look at your forecast. And of course, you can see more of Riley's forecast tonight on CBC Winnipeg News at 6. 12:36 now. Well, it's a federal leadership face-off. The candidates are former Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney, former Government House Leader Karina Gould, and former MP and businessman Frank Baylis. The four took part in English and French debates earlier this week. They gave Canadians a chance to hear why each of them thinks they should be the party's new leader and the country's next prime minister. That decision happens on March 9th. Now, with 1 week left to go, who do you think should lead the Liberal Party into the next federal election? We want to hear from you. Give us a call, 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. You can, of course, always text us your questions and comments at 204-588-7355. Christopher Adams is adjunct professor of political studies at the University of Manitoba and joins me now. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me, Christopher.
Hi, Marjorie. Nice to be with you again.
We've had now the two debates, the French and the English debates. I just want to ask you, what did you take away from the debates there?
Well, the sense from the end of the French debate is, among all the pundits, is that none of the top three are very proficient in French. I mean, they speak French, but they weren't. Frank Baylis seemed to be the most capable. But Carney did have some problems with French, and there were some embarrassment moments. But then the English one just seemed to be quite different. The fact of the language issue wasn't as strong there, and I would say Carney and Freeland were the people that were being watched the most. But Karina Gould, you know, the sense among pundits is that Karina Gould had the strongest communication skills at the English debate, and she does come across in a very strong way, in a kind of a bright way when she speaks at these gatherings.
So do you think that has changed at all who the front runners? First of all, let's start off. Who do you think the front runners are, and do you think that these debates impacted that at all?
So, Marjorie, usually we don't have polls of members that we see in the media, but Main Street Research, headed up by Keto Maggie, came out with a poll just recently of Liberal members. I don't know where he gets the sample from, but it could be that he just does large population samples and asks them if they're members of the party. But the Carney, as I was reading his report yesterday, that Carney was leading. The other way to measure these leadership races is to look at the financial contributions, and especially with the limits to how much everybody can donate to a candidate. It doesn't mean one person just walks in with $1 million for a donation. But Carney, as of last week, was exponentially ahead of all the other candidates. There was reporting by Dan Arnold of Polera, who does a podcast. He was saying that there's a delay in Chrystia Freeland's numbers because of something about the e-transfers. So she's not as behind as some people were saying, but nevertheless, Carney is winning the race for donations. And the other thing that we use to measure how people are doing in these leadership races are endorsements. And Carney is far ahead of the other ones for endorsements from those within the federal Liberal caucus.
We're speaking with Christopher Adams, adjunct professor of political studies at the University of Manitoba, and talking about the Liberal leadership race, the federal Liberal leadership race. Give us a call if you have a question or a comment, 204-780-0893, or you can also text us at 204-588-7355. Topics, of course, some of the big ones, Christopher, were obviously what's happening south of the border, as well as heading into the next federal election and facing off against the Conservatives, quite possibly. What were some of the other moments or topics that you think really stood out during either debate?
Well, I would say the main thing is Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, as you're mentioning, Marjorie, has really shaken up the situation. 2 months ago, people didn't realize that Trump would be what he would be doing right now. And he's really changed the whole rule book. That is, the Conservatives and the Liberals have to be dealing with what are they going to do with tariffs. And one of the big questions is which of these Liberal leaders is best qualified to deal with Donald Trump? And Chrystia Freeland came in with an advantage because she had been dealing with Donald Trump in his first term back in 2016 to 2020. But Carney, I think, has sort of taken the lead. Chrystia Freeland has been denigrated by Donald Trump verbally. So I would say that Donald Trump has really changed a lot of the story right now. And in fact, if we look at the polls right now, Marjorie, is like Léger is one. Another one is Ipsos. Ipsos just came out yesterday with a poll showing that the Liberals are tied with the Conservatives, and Ipsos is a very reputable polling firm. So I would say that Trump has really changed the scenario, and we saw that in the English debates. Trump was front and center in much of the debates.
We have a comment, Christopher, from Kate, who commented on YouTube, and she says that Carney is best equipped to deal with the chaotic U.S. What do you think of that comment?
Well, that's the Trump card. I shouldn't say Trump card, but anyway, that's the thing that Carney is able to say, that he was here as governor of the Bank of Canada in 2008 during the collapse of the Western economies, and then he was governor of the Bank of England during the Brexit issues. So he really has a record of dealing with tumultuous times, but at the same time, we don't know how he'll be on the campaign trail. And it's one thing to be a finance type of guy, a bank type of guy. It's another thing to actually be in rallies and perform well. I do know that he's got one issue that's percolating in this past 24 hours, and that is the moving of Brookfield Assets, their main office. That he was on their board until late last year, and that Brookfield Assets recently has determined that they're going to be moving their offices to New York City from Toronto. Now, Carney, in his defense, has said that this is after he was on the board, but I think the Conservatives are going to be able to stick this story with them, that Carney moves with capital, not with Canadian sympathies. And I think there's going to be a battle between Carney and the Conservatives on who gets to tell that story appropriately. But I think Carney by far is the front runner right now. I think he's seen as the strongest distance from Justin Trudeau of the leaders, and he's doing well on the hustings.
We have a caller on the line. Colleen is joining us now here on Radio Noon. Hi, Colleen. Oh, I think we have Colleen on the line now. Hi, Colleen. Are you there? Hi, Colleen. Are you there? Sorry.
Turn my radio down.
Okay. Hi there, Colleen.
Hi.
Hi.
I just had a quick question about Mark Carney. If he wins and he becomes prime minister, how does it work, because he won't have a seat? He hasn't been elected in the House. So how does that work? Does somebody else have to give up their seat for him, or?
So I can answer that. Thanks, Colleen, for that question. I would say that we are likely to go to an election right away. It'll be like poop through a goose, if you excuse the expression. So there won't. There's a question as to whether the House of Commons will actually sit. There are two probable scenarios here. One is Mark Carney if he's elected, or Chrystia Freeland or Karina Gould or Frank Baylis, whoever's made the leader, goes to the Governor General and says, I want to call an election right now, and the governor general will probably say yes. Or else the other scenario is that becomes the prime minister as the leader of the party, and they go to the House. There's a new session, there's a new throne speech, there's a chance for the opposition to do their votes of non-confidence, and then the House falls. Those are the two likely scenarios. And so then your question is, can he or she or Carney's or Bayless and Carney are both not members of parliament right now. What would happen if either of those two were elected? Are they prime ministers without having a having a seat in the House of Commons? Well, I flubbed this question last time, and this time I'm prepared for this question. So you can be the prime minister. You don't have a seat in the House of Commons. You'd be up in the visitors gallery, much like John Turner was back in 2004. And so he would still be prime minister. He just wouldn't have a seat in the House of Commons. If for some strange reason suddenly this parliament lasts till the fall, because that is the established date for this parliament to have an election, there could be a by-election where someone vacates his or her seat, and then the new leader runs for that position. But it's likely that it's too short of a time for it to have a real impact. But yes, a non-sitting leader can still be prime minister.
Colleen, thank you so much for your call here on Radio Noon. We are talking to Christopher Adams, adjunct professor of political studies at the University of Manitoba. We're talking about the federal Liberal leadership race here. The decision for a new leader will actually take place on March 9th. Give us a call. We want to get your questions and comments on the air, 204-780-0893 or 204-588-7355. And I kind of want to go back to that a little bit, Christopher, because you touched on that. Are we going to see a spring election, or are we going to see this happen in the fall?
Well, I'd be very surprised if it goes to the fall. It could, formally speaking, but both the NDP, Blanchette for the BQ, as well as Poilievre, all three of the leaders in the House, who one of those three parties needs to support this minority Liberal government if it's to continue. But all three leaders have said they're going to be putting forward or pushing for a non-confidence vote. So it's very unlikely that we'll go to the fall. But Marjorie, it's kind of a strange time right now. We've got this leadership race that's been so short. We'll have a new prime minister, whoever's made the new leader of the Liberal Party. Today, we've got the Ontario election going on, and it'll be on CBC Gem and News World tonight, I'm sure. But likely it'll be Ford who will be the person elected as the premier of Ontario. But there are all these things swirling around in our political world, and one of the things is that Poilievre ran on this axe the carbon tax, and most of these candidates for the Liberals, Karina Gould is less strong on axing the tax, but the other three have said they would eliminate this carbon tax, and suddenly this puts it over to Pierre Poilievre as to how will you respond, that you've campaigned on this as one of your major things, and then what are you going to do now? But it's an interesting time for political scientists to be watching this Ontario election, watching the federal election, and we've got other elections just around the corner in other provinces.
Absolutely. It is a very interesting time in Canadian politics there, as you mentioned. I mean, not just in Canadian politics, I mean, in politics like all over the world, Christopher.
Yeah. Yes, and if you look at elections around the world over the past 2 years, many of the incumbent governments have been turfed out. And we just saw this in Germany. The Conservatives won the election, but the equivalent of the neo-Nazi party came in a strong second in that election. So we saw on the other side, ideological side, we saw the Labour Party take power away from the Conservatives in the United Kingdom. And that was a big change as well. So we're seeing, and we saw the Democrats defeated just a couple of months ago by the Republicans. So there is a movement. A lot of people around the world in the modern democracies, modern industrial democracies, are getting rid of their past governments, and it's more towards the right than to the left.
We want to hear your comments, questions about the federal Liberal leadership race. The number to call is 204-780-0893. You can also text us at 204-588-7355. I want to get back to the Liberal leadership race, Christopher, and ask you a question about distancing themselves from Justin Trudeau. Do you feel that the candidates did enough of that?
Well, the prominent leader who's done that is Chrystia Freeland, who really kind of exploded her connection to Justin Trudeau by walking out of the cabinet, saying that she was stepping down as deputy prime minister and as finance minister. And that was in early December. I mean, she really did actively separate herself from Justin Trudeau. Whether the electorate, the Canadian electorate, would see it in the same light is another thing. Just because, I mean, she was with the Trudeau administration for 10 years and was one of the early candidates with Justin Trudeau when he became leader. So I would say that would be difficult. But all these candidates are separating themselves from Justin Trudeau. But I think that's quite common after a government's been quite unpopular. There was that same movement when Pierre Trudeau stepped down, and the candidates were separating themselves, some more so than others. John Turner more than Jean Chrétien in the 1984 leadership. So, but there is that movement. You separate yourself from the past leader, and we saw that in the NDP leadership convention here in Manitoba. The candidates were not attaching themselves to the Selinger government when they were looking to run and Wab Kinew against Ashton. Those are the two candidates.
Christopher, we have a text that I believe Gilles, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, messaged us. They messaged, if I was a Liberal Party member, after having listened to both debates, I would support and vote for Frank Baylis. He has put forth the most intelligent policies and ideas, and he's not afraid to answer questions directly. He doesn't try to answer without answering. As well, his experience as a private sector businessman and job creator is something which is sorely needed in Ottawa and elsewhere. Unfortunately, he won't win. And I think a lot of attention has been on Freeland, has been on Carney, but I mean, there are two other candidates, Gould and Frank Baylis, who maybe hasn't been getting as much attention.
Yes, and Frank Baylis is not an elected MP. He was an elected MP, but he's not one now. But it's true, he's come across fairly well in this campaign. He speaks very well. He did well in the French language debates. He also comes with a business understanding, and that's one of the trump cards in his hands that he plays during this campaign. But it's highly unlikely that he will be a front runner when the votes are counted. But it's true, that he has been good. And we often see this in leadership campaigns, that there's one or two individuals who have smarts, who are skilled. And but I would say that Frank Baylis might convert this into a strong political career. Like he's likely, I don't know if he has, but he's likely committed to running in the coming election. He would represent, if he won, a Quebec riding. He would be able to move himself likely into the cabinet if it's a Liberal government. So sometimes we see these candidates come forward both to have a voice and to raise their profile, but also as kind of a long game. Like that they might not be prominent right now, but they might become prominent over the next couple of years if they play their cards right.
Christopher, we received just another text here from Steve. Steve messaged, would Carney do any better than previous outsiders like Dion and Ignatieff? Yeah, and Carney, not an experienced politician, known more for being a businessman. Of course, governor of Bank of Canada, Bank of England. What do you think?
Well, there have been a number of people who've sort of drawn the connection between Ignatieff and Carney, and I think the Conservatives are looking at that very closely, because the Conservatives demolished Ignatieff. They came forward with that, is he just visiting? He's come from outside the country, come back for campaigning. They painted him as an egghead academic, but I would say Ignatieff is somewhat different than Mark Carney. Mark Carney being a governor of two national banks, that's a fairly political situation where you have to balance strong interests and you have to be out speaking to business groups across the country. Like Tiff Macklin right now is the head of the Bank of Canada, and he was at a meeting I was at last year of university presidents in Ottawa a year ago. So you have to be out there and you have to be dealing with crowds and dealing with conflicting pressures as a Bank of Canada, whereas Ignatieff came through as a senior scholar, as a writer of high prominence in the United States and elsewhere. So I would say the parallels between the two of them is there are some, but they aren't as strong as others. But there is the risk. There is the risk that you vote in a leader who really hasn't run in campaigns, who or like someone like John Turner. Sorry to keep going back to him as examples, but John Turner was seen as a very veteran, proficient politician from the late 60s and early 70s, and he got brought back in the 80s, and he was so rusty that the Liberal Party was decimated after the Mulroney landslide. So there always is that gamble of bringing in a leader who we haven't seen on the hustings in the same way as someone like Chrystia Freeland or Karina Gould.
We have another message here from Valerie. Valerie texted us, Christopher. She says, even though the leadership debates were broadcast, the audience was Liberal Party members, not the general public. Carney is by far the best qualified of the candidates. Karina Gould is getting a lot of attention, but her experience is thin. Once an election is called, if Carney wins, he'll have the whole caucus and party behind him. What do you think about that comment?
Well, that's true. And the number of people watching the Liberal leadership, I mean, it's small compared to like a federal election campaign. I would say that if Carney were elected, he would have the caucus behind him. He's got a good sizable number of endorsements from the caucus right now. He would come in with a very strong wind in his sails. We do know the polling, but Leger had what would happen if Carney were leader, how would you vote? And that poll showed that the Liberals would be tied with the Conservatives. And then we see this Ipsos poll I was referring to a little bit earlier that Carney and the Liberals would do well. So I would say that it's shocking how different things are from 2 months ago. And no one would have predicted 2 months ago that we'd be in this situation where the Liberals might have a shot at winning even a majority government. 2 months ago, if you looked at the polling, the websites like Eric Grenier's CBC site, it was like 5% possibility of the Liberals winning a majority. That's now like all blown out of the water.
I want to ask you here one last question, Christopher, because we have less than a minute left.
Oh, okay.
March 9th. I know it went by really fast, and we got some great messages and questions. Before March 9th, do you expect anything to change, or what will you be watching?
Well, many a slip between the cup and the lip, that things can change. Carney looks like he's on a cakewalk to winning this leadership. But, as we saw with the story of Brookfield Asset Management, them moving to the U.S., suddenly there might be other stories that come up. So it's not necessarily a cakewalk to March the 9th. But right now, just like being in the fifth inning of a baseball game, the score as 5-2 runs, something could change between the fifth inning and the ninth inning.
Christopher, it is always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks, Margie. It was fun.
Christopher Adams is adjunct professor of political sciences at the University of Manitoba, political studies at the University of Manitoba. It is now 12:58. You're listening to Radio Noon, and Faith Dahl has joined us in the studio. Hi, Faith.
Hello, Marge. As folks have been hearing, Manitoba has been the first province to strike a pharmacare deal with the federal government. We're going to hear more from the president and CEO of Diabetes Canada about what this means for patients. Is this more than just an accounting exercise? All those details at 3 o'clock.
Thank you very much, Faith.
Thank you.
Tune in to Up to Speed this afternoon, 3 to 6 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. Thank you so much to everyone who sent in their comments, their questions. And thank you so much to the wonderful folks who worked so hard on the show today. Our tech is May McKillop, director Sierra Sanders, producer Wendy Parker, YouTube live stream Travis Peterson. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. Thank you so much for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. And stay tuned here to CBC Radio 1. Up next, Quirks and Quarks. Have a good one.
and tune in to